All right, so let's get started from kennels to clicks. What marketing strategies actually drive adoptions? I am Kasey Spain. I'm the Senior Manager of Network Engagement and Shelter Pet Data Alliance at Best Friends Animal Society. I'm so glad to be here with you all today. And I'm even happier to introduce you to our incredible panelists. We have Michelle Dunivan, who's the Senior Director of Insights and Analytics at Best Friends Animal Society. We have Quinn, who's the adjunct instructor for the University of Florida and a freelance communications consultant. And we have Jessica Arias, who's the director of animal services at City of Burlington in North Carolina. We're so excited to have you all with us today, and we'll let you get started.
Thanks so much, Kasey. Well, I'm so excited to be here today with two of the best in the biz and talking about a really great survey that we did. It was a teeny tiny survey, just took 3 minutes and 17 seconds on average to complete, just 10 questions. And we just got a ton of insights from just these few questions. So we had 91 shelters that participated. For those of you in the audience who were some of those 91, or on our panel, as the case may be. Thank you so much for doing that. You should have received your custom report in the mail last week. And if not, then you might want to look for the email and you'll have a little gift waiting for you after the webinar to be able to see your own results. So we took this data and we also took some data that we received from Adopt-A-Pet and Pet Finder and our partnerships with them. And then we took some of the incredible data that these shelters have provided us over the years regarding intake and outcomes that has come through Shelter Pet Data Alliance and other means of collecting that data through Best Friends directly. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And I'll just jump right in with the very first finding that we had, and it's actually two findings. So they go together, they're very similar to each other. So through this survey, we found that shelters that post more types of information on their websites have higher adoption rates, and shelters that post more frequently on their websites have higher adoption rates. And this is really incredible. So this is about your website, right? Everybody has a website. Practically everybody has a website, and the vast majority of participants in our survey did have a website. But if they posted more types of information or more frequently, then we saw higher adoption rates. This is incredible. This is not something that we typically see, something so simple relating to higher adoption rates. So I would love to hand it over to Caitlin to talk about what that looks like, how we capitalize on that very important resource that so many shelters have.
Thanks, Michelle. So I think that those findings make a lot of sense when we think like our users, which we're really going to encourage you to do throughout this webinar, is really put yourself in the shoes of the audience that you're trying to reach. So when we treat our website as our home base, it means that whether you're posting on social or you're putting flyers out in the community, you are redirecting people constantly back to that centralized home base as the reliable place that they can keep finding information about you. And I think when, again, we think like we are when we think like users in the way that we use Google and things like that, this makes perfect sense. So we often know the name of an organization, or we know the name of an event, or we can remember part of a piece of information. And the first thing that we do is jump on Google and start typing away. And so we want to make sure that our websites are really keyworded appropriately with those kinds of terms that will help ensure that we rank higher on Google. So things like dog adoption, the name of your city, town, county, all of that, making sure that your bios are doing some of that heavy lifting for you as well, your pet adoption bios. And then really importantly, again, if we think about the way that we use the internet, it's often on our phones, right? So we want to make sure that we're ensuring a very smooth, mobile-friendly experience, and that the website is easy to read when it's small and mobile. Similarly, we want to make sure that we're using visuals, whether it's video or photos, that are very engaging, and that we're considering what those will look like in a mobile experience. And to talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to throw it to Jessica, who can kind of show us what her amazing website is doing.
Well, thanks, Caitlin. And for us, creating that home-based feeling, it really comes down to designing the site around the community's needs rather than our organizational structure. So when someone lands on our site, we want them to feel like they can quickly find answers to the most common questions. whether that's what to do if they've lost a pet, how to get help with pet care, or how to get involved with our organization. For examples, pages like our pet help resources serve as a central hub. It's a first stop where people can get practical tools and support. The idea about designing this when we were building this out was to make the website feel less like a government portal, since our agency is local government. And we wanted it to feel more like a trusted neighbor pointing you in the right direction. So that approach not only made the site more welcoming, it also helps us reduce unnecessary intake and keeps pets with families who love them, which is our ultimate goal. All of our pages use that same hub design, taking into account user experience and ease of quickly finding information that they need in a way that really flows intuitively for them. And another important part of creating that home-based feeling, as Caitlin mentioned, is making sure we meet the public the way they actually search. And that means mobile first. Most people aren't sitting down at a desktop to look up animal services. They're on their phones, often in the middle of a situation where they need quick information or want to take an action right away. So that's why it's not enough just to design for desktop and hope it works on mobile. Content has to be adapted to flow well. That means shorter text blocks, clear buttons instead of buried links, graphics that resize cleanly, and layouts that don't force people to pinch and zoom. The QR code here on this slide links to our homepage, and you can see how we've organized it so that on mobile, it's really easy to scroll and find options for our programs and services, supporting us, learning about upcoming events and specials, and even our social feeds. And by removing these barriers and making the site more mobile friendly, we're really making it easy for someone to go from interest to action in just a few taps. The last piece of our web design strategy is showing that animal welfare isn't just about what happens inside our agency, it's about the whole community working together. And pages like our field services and Get Involved highlight the role neighbors play in this ecosystem, with reporting and reuniting lost pets, preventing or resolving problems before they reach us, volunteering, fostering, and advocating for pet care. By presenting animal services in this way, we're reframing our organization as one part of a larger network of community solutions. It helps people see themselves as active partners, not just bystanders. And that shift in perspective really builds trust and the engagement that we want. The last piece is about purposeful messaging, and for us, that means using a tone and branding that are warm, approachable, and inclusive. We want people to feel right away that our organization is supportive, modern, community-centered agency that they can trust. It also means being intentional about how information is presented. Page design isn't just about sharing content, it's really about guiding behavior. And on our foster page, for example, the graphic icons are ordered to lead visitors from learning why fostering matters to how it works, and then finally, how to sign up. This QR code on this screen shows you what that page looks like on mobile, and it's intentionally laid out to create a natural flow that nudges people from curiosity into taking action. That balance of clear pathways without that clutter really lets users solve a problem quickly if that's what they need, or they can explore an issue more deeply if they're ready to get involved.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I mean, that's a lot to absorb, right? There's just so many different things you could do to optimize your website. And one of the great findings, finding number 3 that we had from this survey, was that one type of information that's on your website stood out more than the others as far as increasing adoption rates. And it was shelters that posted adoption events had the highest adoption rates of anybody. And when we got that finding, we thought, well, this is a little bit, this is maybe less clear than it would appear, because that means that these are also the shelters that are hosting adoption events. So Jessica, I'd like to send it back to you to see what do you do to host and post your adoption events on your website?
Absolutely. One of the more effective ways that we've been able to expand our reach is by really leaning into adoption events that are amplified through marketing. So it's not necessarily we're doing anything different inside our operations, but these are really marketing driven events. And you'll see here 2 examples of our billboard campaigns. We also use these on our website and social. So all that copy is consistent for our advertising of these events. The goal with these was really to make adoption feel inviting and celebratory. And these examples show how we tied those seasonal themes of summer and the holidays and then kept the message simple and upbeat. Billboards really gave us visibility with audiences who might not be following us online, and they spark curiosity that often leads people to check out our website or even come and visit us in person, which is what we ultimately want. We think a lot about available resources in our local community and what will maximize the return on investment of driving traffic and pet life-saving at our agency. For us, we have the major corridor connecting East and West North Carolina right in our backyard. So we're really fortunate. And we work with donors to fund billboards on that highway to make it more doable for us. However, there's many other opportunities that exist, and doing what makes the most sense for your community in terms of selecting locations to get your message in front of your target audience is really what's most important. And notice here how we used minimal words to get our message across. We know that when you're driving on the highway and people see these ads for seconds, sometimes shorter at a time. I don't know if you've been in our state, but like I feel like the minimum speed, even though it's posted at 65, it's much faster than that. So you just get a second maybe for people to notice. And so the trick is to get a complex message across through imagery, tone, and emotion with as few words as possible. So we use images and words that connotate positive emotions and kept the message simple and inclusive. We also chose to include only our logo and left out other information like location or web address because no one's going to remember that from a highway billboard, but they will remember our name and our logo, and that's enough for them to go Google later. And what we've learned is that when you combine the event itself with clear, memorable messaging and strong visuals, it not only drives adoptions in that moment, but it also builds long-term awareness of your agency through brand. And it's also lets folks know you're a welcoming place to find a loving pet or just connect with resources related to pets.
Amazing, all the things that you can tell with just the pictures, right? The message that you can get across without having to say a lot of words. That's incredible.
So to reiterate what Jessica was just saying, event doesn't need to be something that happens off-site. It doesn't need to be something that you're packing up crates for and moving animals around. Really eventizing what's happening in the shelter by using those strong visuals and even thinking similarly to what Jessica was just saying about our social media graphics or our website graphics, the same way that we think about a billboard. People are scrolling at the speed of light, and so we want to make them as impactful and memorable as possible without trying to jam pack too much information onto them. And then really embrace things like a theme, a holiday, even a pop culture moment like Taylor Swift's recent engagement would be a great way to kind of eventize adoption for your organization, especially if you're able to do reduced fee or free events at that moment at the same time. The other thing that you can do, and this kind of goes back to that idea of remembering what it's like to be someone who's in your audience, or remembering what it was like to be slightly intimidated by trying something new. When we were talking about this, Michelle and Jessica and I were all thinking about those intimidating life moments, like walking into a gym for the first time or joining a book club for the first time. And that feeling of just like, I don't know what to expect. I'm a little bit afraid to walk through the door. And so by kind of embracing that that's true for a lot of people about pet adoption and doing something like a virtual tour where you grab your cell phone, you walk through and kind of help people understand what they will encounter when they walk through the doors and really embrace the positivity of what you can show them about what your shelter is doing. Getting them to take that first step is such a critical part of this, and part of this idea of posting events on your website can include the digital forms of what that looks like. And we put on here like bonus points if you can do a live Q&A or a live tour. I know that sometimes is a little bit intimidating, but that ability to interact with your audience in that way feels so much more personal, and it allows people to kind of overcome those barriers that they might be experiencing. So we want to show you this video that comes from Jessica's amazing shelter that kind of gives. So that particular video is about volunteerism, but just think about how you could similarly, promote an adoption event, or just the idea of a reduced fee adoption happening at your shelter using a similar style video.
Thank you. All right, so on to our fourth finding from this survey that we did, and we found that a lot of times we want to drive traffic to our own website, but in this case, when we use other websites as well, like Pet Finder, Adopt a Pet, Nextdoor, Dubert, they also have higher adoption rates. And so what I'd like to move on to and ask a question about is some guidance on things like Nextdoor, Dubert. We know Pet Finder, we know Adopt a Pet. Like, what about these other ones that are out there? I'd love to hear some guidance from Jessica and Caitlin about all the cool things that we can do on some of these like lesser used websites to get the word out about our shelter.
Absolutely. Here's a couple of examples from things Burlington's put on Nextdoor. And we really wanted to find ways to meet people where they already are instead of expecting them to come looking for us. And Nextdoor really felt like a natural fit because it's hyper-local, it's neighborhood-based, and that's how we want people to think about animal services too, as community issues with community solutions. And what's been great is that it helps us reach a different audience than our other social platforms like Facebook or Instagram, because we're connecting with people who might not consider themselves animal people, but they do care deeply about their neighborhoods, things like safety and quality of life and community connections. So on Nextdoor, we're not just sharing adoptable pets, we do a little bit of that, but we're leaning more into answering questions, posting resources, and building trust. And it's become a space where we're seen less as a shelter and more as a community resource center for pets. And that's one that's right in their neighborhoods. So I don't know if Caitlin, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think I would just add that I think it's so natural for us to think about the pet related spaces the same way that when we try to brainstorm where to post flyers or some of that traditional marketing material, we often immediately first think of pet supply stores and everything pet related, right? Veterinary offices. But I think what Jessica is saying that's so important is remembering to meet people where they are. So not just capturing the folks who already have pets or are already thinking in that space, but really kind of sneaking up on people in the places that they already exist in the community, but that they may be surprised to learn more about you. I was talking with someone the other day about the luxury that I have to work with a lot of different shelters around the country is that I'm often in little tiny communities, staying in a hotel or getting in a ride share, and I'll tell the person like, oh, I'm here to work with such and such shelter. And the number of times that somebody will be like, oh, I didn't know that we have a shelter, or I had never heard of them. Those are the moments that I want all of us to be in on, in terms of brainstorming these other places like digital billboards, which is the way that I like to think about Craigslist and Nextdoor, the places where we can really reach out and connect with people in unexpected ways. So similarly, I think that we want to try to sneak up on people in other fun ways, by reaching out, especially in rural communities where maybe you don't have as many billboards. I live in a pretty rural community myself in New York State, and there are billboards around, but not necessarily a ton of them and not in a great corridor like Jessica has. So I'm always trying to think of the other ways that I can connect with people in the places that they are already existing, especially outside of digital marketing. So in my community, that looks like community newsletters. So partnering with my local library, who puts a newsletter in everybody's mailbox once a month. Partnering with community centers, senior centers, also thinking about the other places where people in your community are hanging out. So if you have churches that are prominent in your community, seeing if you can partner with their bulletin or partner on a digital adoption event to try to get information out there. Also utilizing just good old-fashioned bulletin boards. So if your grocery store has a bulletin board like mine does, just on your way out or into the grocery store, there's a big community bulletin board in mine. Checking out coffee shops and the places that they have available for you to post information. And then also doing a deeper dive on thinking about those local partnerships. So I love this example that is on the screen right now of the pizza box. So I know several shelters have done this. I think it's a great way. I think that we did a lot of this during COVID when we were really kind of flexing those creative muscles of trying to reach people. And there's no reason not to try to go back to some of those great ideas. So if we can connect with a local restaurant and they're putting flyers or postcards or even business cards into takeout bags or pizza boxes, or even partnering with hairdressers or other places where people in your community are naturally finding themselves, I think that we can go a long way to making those connections. And then I just wanted to draw all of our attention to the Google Ads grant. If you're not using that currently, you can apply as a nonprofit if you're a nonprofit organization, and you can get up to $10,000 per month in free advertising, which just helps you really place those digital ads in places where your community members might be, and gives you a little bit to work with in terms of upping those Google rankings.
A lot of great ideas. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, our last big finding from this survey, but not for this webinar, is about social media. So Facebook was kind of pretty standard and expected. Everybody's got a Facebook, it seems like, but shelters that leverage more than just Facebook also have higher adoption rates. So if you're on Facebook only, maybe time to consider adding another one. And I would love to hear more about what that might look like. So Caitlin, how do we do that? It might feel intimidating, right? There's like, we already have so much. You're telling me to do another thing and another, how do I get started?
Yeah, and it's really important to all three of us that you don't walk away from this webinar feeling overwhelmed, but rather feel empowered. And so I want us all to take this moment to reflect on how groundbreaking Facebook was 15 years ago when it became available to all of us. The idea that we could reach our community in a brand new way, the idea that we could make changes that sometimes are not as easy for us to make to our website, that we could have some control over our messaging and how we were connecting to the community was incredible. And it really was game changing. And the slight downside of that is that we became very reliant on it. And for a lot of us, we started to post things there that we weren't necessarily posting on our website. So we want to take you back to that first and second finding and remind you that that website really needs to be the hub of everything. And then also encourage you, if you already are on Facebook, to start to branch out. And that's going to look different for every organization, but it's really important to consider who you're trying to reach, what your community uses, and how you can kind of start to scale out from Facebook. So if you're using Facebook and you haven't explored Instagram, maybe that's going to be your first step. If you're on Facebook and Instagram, maybe TikTok is the next step, and so on and so forth. Maybe you want to start using LinkedIn, or you want to start using Nextdoor, like Jessica was talking about. The key here is that you don't have to be everywhere. We want you to really embrace this idea of being strategic about your growth onto other platforms and only doing what you can handle. And that you want to make sure that your message is tailored to the platform that you're using. So it's much better to tailor a message to 2 or 3 platforms than to be on 6 platforms and just put the same message out on every single one of them that's not tailored to the way that the platform is used. And my favorite example of this is, I think we've all seen probably Instagram posts where there's a link in the text in the copy of that post, and links aren't clickable on Instagram. So if that's not customized to say link in bio and the bio is not easily accessible, you immediately are hitting a stumbling block as a user. And there's probably a real loss of engagement because it doesn't feel like that message is made for you as someone who's looking at it in that moment. So to kind of combat that feeling of overwhelm, and we want to give you the tools to be strategic, Jessica's going to talk a little bit about some tools that you can rely on.
Thanks, Caitlin. Well, when it comes to content management, what we've found that really helps to use the right tools to stay consistent and organized. So we use Later at our agency as our content management tool, and we use it to plan and schedule our posts across the different channels that we're on. That way we're not scrambling day to day, and we can be more intentional about what we're sharing and when. And we also lean on AI tools to help with content creation, and that can look like brainstorming captions or polishing copy, creating graphic content, or even repurposing posts for different audiences or different platforms. It saves us a ton of time, and it really helps us keep our voice consistent across our messaging. My personal favorite is ChatGPT and Google Gemini, but there are several other great options that are available. Another way that we're using AI is with analytics, and we'll talk more about that coming up. But volunteers are another huge part of our content strategy. They help us capture photos, stories, and the videos that show the real personality of our pets and the impact of our programs in this community. And that authentic content drives connection with our target audience in a big way. And then on the interaction and connection side, we've built in some systems to help us stay responsive. For example, we use autoresponders, some AI is built in there too, and those help point people back to our website. And we can also build in templated responses for some common questions. And that way people get the information they need quickly while freeing up our staff to focus on the more complex or personal interactions. And all of this together really helps keep communication consistent, approachable, and efficient, which is so important when you're trying to build trust and community engagement with limited resources and a small team. And when it comes to social posts, the first thing is knowing your audience and being inclusive in how you speak with them. You always want to have a clear call to action. And if your community speaks more than one language, it's really powerful to reflect that in your posts. These are a couple of examples of translated posts that we'll do and post them together on this slide. But just as important as learning to work with those algorithms, that means opening strong with something that grabs attention. And short form video is one of the best tools we have for that. Video is consistently prioritized by the platforms, and it creates an emotional connection much faster than text or just photos alone. From there, we just keep it concise, clear, and positive. And we're making sure that our tone stays honest and sensitive, because building trust for us is just as important as getting those likes and shares.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. So I did want to share this other finding that we also had recently as adjacent to all of these other findings, and that relates to Adopt-a-Pet and Pet Finder platforms. So hopefully all of you are using Adopt-a-Pet and Pet Finder to help promote all of your adoptable pets in your shelter. And what we found when we looked at all of the shelters that were on each of these platforms and the ones that are posting just a few of their pets versus all of their pets or none of their pets, we found that shelters that post all available pets in their care have save rates 5 percentage points higher. That means that could take you from an 84% save rate to an 89% save rate. And we've never done a study or looked at numbers that showed that big of a difference in save rate. Save rate is it is one of the more complex things to change because it's not just adoptions, right? It also has to do with intakes, and it has to do with return to owner and all of these different complexities. But the finding that these two things are correlated is really, really impressive. And so we have a QR code here, and I think we're going to put a link in the chat regarding the findings and more of the details about that study that we did, so that you can look a little bit closer into it. But I definitely wanted to share that with this group because that is part of what we're talking about with marketing and using other platforms. And so one of the things that we also wanted to make you aware of, if you want to move to the next slide, is that both Adopt-a-Pet and Pet Finder have automatic pet posting opportunities through your shelter management software. And so we're also going to provide you links to both of those platforms so that if you don't have that turned on yet, you can easily turn that on. And that's the same as what we have for a few of the shelter management softwares with SPDA, is that it just makes your life so much easier, right? You don't have to remember to go and do it. You don't have to do anything individually. You don't have to, fit it into your busy workday. It's like a crock pot, right? You set it and forget it. You go ahead and you have it, you set it up the one time, and it continues to do the work for you. And so because that's available so widely with both of these platforms, wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and that you have those resources easily accessible. So what now? We have all of this information. We know empirically what works and what's helping us to get more pets adopted in our communities and to save more lives. And so I wanted to take a moment to especially talk to Jessica about all of the incredible data work that is being done. If you want to implement any of these things, and I hope you get off this call and you decide, oh yeah, absolutely, here's the different things that we're going to do. I don't want to forget to measure it and use your data to your advantage so that you can see, is it really making a difference, and how is it making a difference? So if we go to the next slide, we can share with you the something that Jessica's team put together for showing the effectiveness of one of her campaigns, and then also some data that we have that we can pull from Shelter Pet Data Alliance that shows the difference between two different time periods. And on the right-hand side, what you see is that of all of the different outcome types, everything's staying pretty similar, but after Jessica's team implemented those billboards, we're seeing an increase in adoptions specifically. And so that's one of the ways that you might be able to tell that it's having an impact, right? It might not have an impact within a few weeks or even a month or two, but over time you can really start to see that. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you're not collecting that data from the start and you don't know from the beginning what do your adoption numbers look like. So Jessica, can you tell us a little bit about this other beautiful visual that you created? The one on the right is more for our own internal uses, but the one on the left would be something maybe, where did you present this information?
Yeah, so this was something I've used in several presentations for different audiences that I present, like city council or different stakeholders and funders. But I think it's really important, to remember that we've always got to be measuring our data and measuring the impact of the things that we're doing and being ready to adjust. And because, like Michelle was talking about, when we realized our billboards were being that effective, we said, maybe we need to focus more and invest more on that than some of the things that are less effective. And so it really helps you focus your resources and use them smart to maximize your advantage. So when we talk about measuring progress at BAS, our number one priority is always going to be life-saving. And if you only looked at one metric, that's the one that matters the most, how many pets' lives we're able to save. But beyond that, I really love analysis and digging into the data. So our social content management platforms give us really helpful insights into performance. So those platforms we mentioned aren't just for a cool tool to help you post things and make life so much easier, but they also have really, they're gold, with data to tell you like what's working, what's performing well, and it really helps you then to tailor your posts to what resonate with your audience. And we also use Placer AI. So this slide with the visitor data was derived from Placer AI. It's a fantastic tool for visitor data. It goes really in depth into community demographics and tells us who our clients are, how far they're traveling. What that means for how we shape our outreach is that we can really narrow down and see like who's visiting us and what are their backgrounds, and learn more about our audience and who those people are and maybe their needs, and really speak to that in some of our marketing. And on top of that, we're using those AI tools as well, like ChatGPT, which is really great to help generate ideas. It also can help us with data analysis and trend spotting and help us shape our strategic planning around marketing. And we also pay attention to those billboard and ad impression data analytics that we get from those vendors, and even how many QR code scans with which QR codes that we have out there on our materials, because those tell us whether people are taking that next step after they see that message in our advertisement or posts. And all of these layers together really help us see the full picture of not just how many pets we're saving, but how effectively we're connecting people, connecting with the people who make that life-saving possible.
Yeah, Jessica, you just reminded me of something too, is, if you just knew, okay, that's how many times somebody clicked on a QR code, it doesn't mean a whole lot if you're just looking at that one. What really helps is to have collected it for other campaigns as well, or to be able to compare it to something else. And it's because in a vacuum, you don't really know what that means. Like, oh, 250, is that a lot or is that a little? But if you track it over time, then you can start to see patterns, and you can start to see, oh, that one was really good. Was it the time of year? Was it the content on it? Was it that we had fewer words? What was it about it? You can start analyzing those things. But just one in and of itself, that's something, but it's so much, it's very impressive to be able to track over time. And one of those tools that could help you to do that, especially related to intakes and outcomes, is our Shelter Pet Data Alliance. So, this is our product that we've had out for a couple of years now. We have a ton of data in there. Thanks to all of you who are submitting your data either through the automatic data sharing, or, you're going in there every month and updating your data. It really helps us to see which shelters are doing well, so we can reach out to people like Jessica and ask for, how are you doing this so well? And also to identify shelters that could maybe use some more support and help. And so on the next slide, you'll see there's a QR code there for you, as well as, I think in the chat, if you have not yet started with Shelter Pet Data Alliance, you can submit your data very easily, even if you're doing it manually. It's very quick and easy and straightforward. And there are customized insights specifically for your shelter, and you can look at how your shelter compares to other shelters nearby, or anywhere in the US. There's a lot of opportunity there. And if you need any help, we have people, as a matter of fact, on this very call, that are available and can help you through that process of getting set up, or learning. If you're already set up and you're kind of stymied about where do I go next, we're happy to help you with all of that. So I want to hand it over to Caitlin now about some more resources that might help you on this journey.
Thank you. So I am on the board of an organization called Heartspeak, and I was lucky enough for 9 years actually to be the director of operations there. It's an organization that's very close to my heart, and it was really built around only supporting marketing for animal shelters and the people doing creative work in shelters and rescues across the country. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of resources that they have that you can check out. So there are lots of templates and guides on utilizing different platforms. Plus there is an offshoot of Heartspeak called Images with Heart, which is a stock photo library created specifically for animal welfare in mind. And there is a component to that that is all pets and people photos. So really trying to highlight that connection and showcasing for your audience that you are a welcoming, inclusive environment. We also have an artist network. So there's a lot of photographers, graphic designers, and other creatives out there who want to be volunteering in shelters and rescues and are looking to connect with you. So there's a find an artist map on that website where you can find someone in your area or someone who can work with you from remotely, especially when it comes to graphic design and things like that. And then there's a lot of educational content. So there's courses that are coming out. There's a lot of downloadables and things that you can dig into if you want to do a deeper dive on anything that we've talked about today, and especially if you're interested in kind of upping your photography or videography game.
That's incredible. Thank you. I also want to take this opportunity to thank you so much, Jessica, for letting us share what your amazing report looks like. She's, head of the class kind of situation here, as Jessica tends to be, and so lots of great results. Why not share that, right? And so this is the kind of customized report that those participants in our survey a few months ago received last week that I mentioned earlier today. And I wanted to also let you all be the first to know that we will have another one that is just going live. And I saw that the link was posted in the chat to ask you a few questions about foster programming. And so we'd love to be able to do the same thing and get insights from more of you and be able to deliver a custom report back to more of you, and then have some of those insights to share again with our entire Best Friends network and support you and help you in your next efforts. So with that, I think we are ready for questions, and also wanted to share, there's this one last QR code, because if you didn't have enough resources to, to scare you as it is, we also have this digital pause social media marketing guidebook that Jessica and Kasey and others were really helpful in preparing to, remind you of some of those points that we talked about today as well.
This was fantastic. I can't get over, I was just sitting here thinking about when I was a wee little marketing manager in a shelter years ago and how few things we had. I remember starting the Instagram and like no one was using Instagram and it was very new, and that was the only other platform we had. So there's so many other things you can do, and we've gotten some really great questions that have come in through the Q&A feature, and I wanted to make some space to ask you all those things. So one thing I'm going to start at the top. There was several questions. One person asked, what was the best cadence, or do we have any data on what the best cadence is for TikTok, Instagram, Facebook? I think they mean like how frequently you should be posting on those platforms.
I can say, I know that we did a big section about that in the social media marketing guidebook, and it goes in depth and it has a lot of links, because I think sometimes it can change on the frequency from year to year, day to day, week to week. So there's some good resource links in there where you can find and keep up with the latest trends. So there's a big section on social media trends, and that's a great resource to dig into, to kind of bookmark some pages where you can periodically check in to just make sure that you're still on point with your social media post game.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think it is constantly changing. The algorithms for all those platforms are changing by the minute, it feels like. And so it also really comes down to your audience and the capacity that you have to meet the demand that you're building within those environments. So I want everybody to take like those kind of best practices that are out there with a grain of salt and adjust it to what your capabilities are and the audience that you have there that seems to be taking action based on what you're putting out into the world.
We didn't talk too much about SEO, search engine optimization, but someone asked in the chat, would focusing on SEO benefit a shelter in getting their name higher up in searches?
Yeah, I would say yes. If you have the capacity to do a deeper dive on SEO, it's never a bad idea. It's really, it can only help you, especially, again, if you think like a user, how reliant we are on being able to go to Google, type something in and get a quick result. You want to be ranking as high as possible when someone is Googling pets in your area. So it's very tied to region in that way, especially the way that people use near me, right? In Google, we're all Googling like, best restaurant near me. And so we want to try as hard as we can, even if it's just organically, by using some of those keywords we spoke about at the top of the presentation, to try to ensure that the copy on your website is supporting some good SEO, even if you don't have the capacity right now to do a deep dive on it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've done that helped drive that for us is make sure you have your Google business page built out and up to date. And, use consistency with your keywords, where it's pet adoption, dog adoption, cat adoption, your agency's name, those things, the things that terms people are going to search, and make sure you have that used frequently and abundantly across all of your pages.
Also, if
Absolutely.
you have a frequently asked questions section on your website, answering in complete sentences is a big help for SEO instead of just saying, like, where's the shelter? And then you say, here's the address. You say, our shelter is located, or the shelter name is located at, and it will help with your search engine quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's another question. We get this quite frequently, and I know that this is a regular issue. We're a county organization, not in charge of our website. The website in the example from Burlington looked like, it looked like it was government. Do you have any tips or tricks on how they can accomplish some of the same techniques on social media or using things they can control?
I would say this is about maybe developing a relationship with your county webmaster. We're using Civic Plus, and it's built out for governments, but different web platforms require different coding skill level. Civic Plus is really user friendly for us non-coders, and so we're able to manage that here directly, and that is a real convenience. But I would say reaching out to your webmaster in the county and developing a relationship, building that trust, and perhaps there's some things that they can help you do on site, and perhaps you can create some pipelines where you can get information and updates happening faster and more customized.
Great.
And show some examples of other government agencies like us. That sometimes seems to be helpful in government when you say, yeah, look what this government entity is doing. It's like, oh, well, if they're doing it, now we feel more comfortable.
Yeah. Would you recommend that coming through the director? Do you think that's a good director conversation, or if there is a
Yes.
social media or web person?
Yep, it could be a good director conversation, or if you have, a manager level staff that has connections with those folks in other departments. So it just depends on how your hierarchy is.
And someone asked about LinkedIn. We actually had a couple of questions about LinkedIn. One person asked if they thought LinkedIn was worth it for a small rescue.
I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So LinkedIn, I think, is one of those platforms that is very user specific, right? So whenever you have a goal that you're trying to accomplish, we want to be thinking about the target audience for that goal. And so LinkedIn can be useful for certain things. Like if you're really trying to engage a more corporate partnership kind of side of things, or you're trying to get more volunteerism maybe from the business community locally, LinkedIn can be helpful in that regard because that's the audience that's built for LinkedIn. For a small rescue, if you're not, if you're just kind of taking those steps into, exploring other platforms, and you've got it locked down on Facebook and you're starting to figure out where you want to be next, I would say first just evaluate what are your next goals in terms of marketing. If it's increasing adoptions and you want to, instead of putting effort into LinkedIn, maybe start using TikTok and put more effort even into just capturing more short form video that you can use on Facebook and Instagram and those places, that might be a better use of your time for that specific goal. So I hope this is a helpful answer, but it's very much tied to what you're trying to accomplish.
Have you found that relying predominantly on social media has reduced or affected efficacy on adoptions and engagement?
No, we're just seeing our adoptions go up. I mean, you've got to be at all those places where people are, where your adopters are at.
That's exactly what the study findings were, that the more social media platforms you're on, the higher your adoption rates are. So that's across, dozens of shelters.
Have you found that what works best for adopting out older dogs or seniors? Do we have any information on that, or do you all have any experience in that space?
Definitely tell their story. And I
Yeah.
think Caitlin really can speak to this because HeartSpeak has done some amazing work around helping people to tell the stories in a way that connects with adopters. So
Yeah,
you
I
probably
think
have more to add to that.
I absolutely agree. And I think this is one of those places where you can read a lot of best practices online for social media, and a lot of it will be, keep your captions between this length and this length. And there's always a time to break the rules and to do a little bit more storytelling. And whether that is a lead in that then you're bringing people back to the adoption posting on your website and kind of being able to tell the story more fully there, or using the caption space that you have on different platforms and really owning that you have a story to tell. If you can hook people with a story from the beginning, they will read a caption. I think we have this false sense of like everybody's scrolling and scrolling and they're never going to read a long caption. If it is paired with an engaging photo or video and there is a story to tell, then people will stay with you, especially because we have this superpower of sharing pets. That's what everybody wants in this moment. It's everybody's comfort. It's what we're all sending to each other and our friends and family on Instagram or TikTok. So we have the currency that's valuable to people. And so if we can really embrace those opportunities to tell stories, I think that that's really the core of any strategy about telling the story of a senior. And then just very quickly, the only thing that I would tag on to that, and Heartspeak actually does have a senior pet marketing toolkit on their website. But I think it's really important not to just lean only into stereotypes about senior pets. I think if we're only telling the story of senior pets as they need a rocking chair on your front porch, then it all starts to feel a little stereotypical and a little bit impersonal. And so as best we can, if we can really speak to the individuality of that pet as we know them to be, then it'll be authentic and it'll connect with people.
Great feedback. Zachary asked, how do you collect and analyze data, and which data do you collect and how? I think that's probably a good Michelle question.
Yeah, I love that
combo,
question.
Jessica, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? Like collect all the data all the time? No, absolutely not. Do not do that. That is terrible advice. We don't want to collect all of the data. So I start with a question, right? What question do you want to answer? And then what data is going to help you answer that question? So if your question is are my billboards working? Then you think, well, how am I going to know if my billboards are working? Well, I'm trying to get them to increase adoptions. So I'm going to make sure to track the dates that those billboards are up, and I'm going to track adoptions during that time period. And I'm going to see how it compares to maybe that same time period right before, or I'm going to compare it to the time period the same time the year before, right? And you're going to think about how, if I'm, a lot of times I like to think, okay, in the end, I want to be able to make this statement. I want to be able to say the billboards, by having them up for 30 days, they helped us save 40 extra animals. And if I can say that, so what data points then do I need to collect to be able to make that statement in the end? So I hope that helps. But Jessica does this all the time. She's really great at using data.
Yeah, and my initial response is kind of like Michelle. I'm a data nerd too, so it's like all the things. I want to collect all the things. But if you're using some software that can help you collect the data, and then when you have the question, you have the data to dig into and refine and filter. We're using our shelter software here to collect those data points, but we're also using tools like Power BI. Even something as simple as basic Excel spreadsheet. You can do a lot of things with that and build out data sets that can really help you refine just your numbers to see trends. And, we could probably go in a whole other session on this, but.
Yeah, and another plug for Shelter Pet Data Alliance, right, is that if you are uploading your data there, all the intake and outcome data that you would probably need is going to be available. And so you don't have to remember to collect that. If you're constantly uploading that and making that available, all you're going to need to know is like, oh yeah, when did I start that billboard? When did we have that adoption event? When did we, and then you can track that to the data that you already have available in your shelter management software and in Shelter Pet Data Alliance.
Yeah, Shelter Pet Data Alliance is such a great resource because it's convenient to go to, and you can get that historical data over time if you've been using it for a while. And it's really, especially with that, those numbers are going to be there, and it's really easy. And there's lots of tools and dashboards that kind of do comparisons, and especially externally, and that's really helpful.
That's good. So debunking myths, this isn't too marketing focused, but reputation matters, right? In shelters, we all know that. And so how would you recommend debunking myths specific to your shelter, euthanasia, barriers, different things that folks might not have known, process changes that you've had, past events that have hurt your reputation? What would you do or recommend to do to help with that?
We've been there. I mean, you've got to tell them who you are, not who you're not. Keep your message focused on repeating the message of this is who we are and this is what we're doing, and be transparent and open. But yeah, tell your story about who you are, not what you're not.
I'm a big fan of an FAQ or like a did you know series, especially skewed positively, right? So not trying to tackle like the negative side of that, but really being like, did you know that this is the service that we provide in the community? Did you know about this community program? And I often, even if I'm not using those exact words, if I'm writing a post, will kind of phrase it that way in my head so that I can get to the crux of what I want to say when I want to push back against a myth or a piece of misinformation. And then I think don't underestimate how much you can show in terms of the videos, the photos, especially if you can get staff and volunteers to really embrace being on camera. Sometimes the connection between the folks who work with animals, whether they're staff or volunteers, and the animals that they serve is so strong, and we can see it in photos and videos. And it's a really important part of telling the story of your organization and your culture.
Is there any data that supports the value add to boost social media posts on Meta versus not? Do we know anything about that? Boosting versus running ads, that sort of thing.
I do think that we know that you don't want to throw good money after bad, as the saying goes. And so
Right.
it's best to boost a post that has already gained some traction. And what that means is if people are organically interacting with it and you would like it to get some more eyes on it, then that might be a good situation in which to boost it, because your audience is showing you there's something engaging here. There's something that's working about this. And so boosting it is just going to help amplify that a little bit. I think that in the past, we've sometimes used boosting to go like, well, this post got no attention, and so I'm going to boost it in the hopes that it will get some. And that's usually when we see that it's not as effective.
Good tip. With the reliance on social media, have you seen a difference in return rates of animals, or is it about the same as before? Maybe Jessica, you could
I
answer
think
that.
we've seen like seasonality, and I think consistently over time we see return rates improving. And we're using social media. We did a big campaign last fall about what to do if you lost or found a pet. So if you go to our QR and find our lost and found pets page, it's a simple 1, 2, 3 step by step that kind of directs the behavior of what we want people to do. And we've seen more pets getting returned home from the community instead of coming in and being counted as an in-shelter RTO statistic. But we're seeing more community members being engaged, stepping up, and neighbors helping neighbors. And some of the things that we've implemented, like community pet scan microchip scan stations with local fire departments, and just giving people the tools, the resources, and the information and links to Petco Love Lost, and what to do and where to go and how to connect with your neighbors.
That's great. Okay, one last question. We struggle to reach our senior community. Any tips?
I have so many ideas.
I know these are some really good questions here. Like, I wish we could keep going because there's some really interesting, like, awesome comms questions. I love it.
Right? This is my short and sweet answer is ask some seniors, because I think that what we often do is guess, and we tend, especially with the senior population, to really assume that they are not using digital media, which as the population that is aging is less and less true. I happen to work with a lot of seniors in another job that I do, and I have 90-year-olds who are using email and able to check stuff on their phone. And so I would just encourage you not to assume that everything for seniors has to be traditional marketing. And then I would head on down to the senior center and start asking some questions so that they can tell you how they want to be engaged.
I love it. Well, we have an end of poll. if you could just score this webinar and let us know how likely you are to recommend this to a colleague or friend. Thank you all so much for being a part of this webinar. Again, it will be available in about 3 days, and you'll get a copy of it in your email so you can share it with your colleagues and friends. Thank you all so much, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and great weekend. Take care.